It happened in March 2012. I'm really trying to understand what happened to me because I know I didn't die. I essentially had no heartbeat for less than a second because of a drug I was given to reset a heart arrhythmia. Prior to this experience, I had no frame of reference for what was about to happen to me. I had completely absorbed myself in the Christian notion that you live, die, then go to heaven or hell. There was no in-between heaven or hell, or anything else whatsoever. The content of this experience is difficult for me to define, but I will do best with the words the English language provides. Many months prior to this day, I had begun experiencing two different arrhythmias, one being supraventricular tachycardia, SVT, and the other was atrial fibrillation, AFib. Other than a heart murmur when I was a child, I had never dealt with any issues until after I had been given a birth control shot. Within the first month of the shot, I had my first supraventricular tachycardia. Within 2 months, I had my first atrial fibrillation. So back to the day of my event. I was spending time with my husband and kids. We had just gotten done eating tacos as a family. I was quite full and feeling that post-meal lethargy, when you've definitely eaten way too much. Just as I sat down to relax, I could see my shirt moving from my heart beating at such a rapid rate. I was sure I was in supraventricular tachycardia, so my first response was to try to trigger a reset of my rhythm at home. My electrophysiologist taught me several maneuvers to try at home first, before I call for an ambulance. I tried the things several times, including putting my face in ice-cold water. Nothing was working. I was beginning to panic, which wasn't helping me either. So I made the decision to go to the hospital. In the ambulance, they made me take 4 little aspirins. I remember thinking, why am I taking this? I don't have a headache. I know now that I was having a heart attack. I don't remember much from the drive to the hospital because I was in panic the whole way. EMTs started an IV. We talked about how young I was to be experiencing heart troubles. We arrived at the hospital. I was transferred to a new bed where I was hooked up to the EKG machine. I heard them say, "She's in AFib." I was thinking how scary it was that I thought it was just SVT. Supraventricular tachycardia doesn't typically pose any type of life-threatening risk the way that atrial fibrillation can. As I was thanking God that I made it to the hospital without anything more serious happening, that's when another nurse came over to stick me with another IV. I asked why I had to have another IV. He told me it was because they were going to give me heart medication to reset my rhythm. Since I didn't know anything about it, I didn't argue. They explained that it was the first thing they try before moving to more invasive things like cardioversion. I was told that my heart rate would drop down to 0 and then go back up very quickly. They didn't explain how it would make me feel, just what it would do. The male nurse put the syringe into the IV. I heard a pop in the top of my head, and then I was above my body watching doctors and nurses moving in the slowest slow motion I have ever seen. It was like a freeze frame of the room where everything was moving so slow. In fact, if I wasn't on the ceiling, looking down, I may not have had the perspective to see that everything was actually moving at all. My thoughts weren't slow though. I was taking this all in real time. I don't know how to describe this part, but it's like anything I looked at, I could see it in complete detail. Although my focus was downward on what was happening, I could perceive happenings in every direction. Just by shifting my focus, I could see microscopic details such as the texture on the ceiling. It's like I was only a set of invisible eyes, with thoughts and feelings larger than life. I looked at this scene for what felt like minutes, then suddenly what I was watching all faded away, as if it fell into a spinning vortex. I don't know how to explain it other than it's like everything, the hospital room, myself on the bed, all the nurses and doctors. All of it spun out of sight into the vortex, and all that was left was blackness. And when I say blackness, it's because there isn't a word in the English language to describe the darkness I saw. It was almost a palpable darkness, like it was holding me in it. I had the thought, if I'm there, then how am I here? Where is here? Then all my memories of this life and other lives came flooding back. And I knew those other lives were mine, just as much as I knew my current life was mine. I saw flashes of so many lives and moments I had hurt other people or loved other people. There was no judgment in any of this. It was merely me observing me without feelings. I felt another presence with me at some point after this. I say, after this, but events were not linear or sequential. Everything was happening all at once. Though I can only explain it as separate events because that's the only way I can make sense of it for myself. This presence telepathically told me that it's time to go back. And this was just a glimpse. Immediately, I was back in my body, seeing with my own eyes as the nurse took the syringe out of my arm. I saw my heart rate going up from apparently 0. I spent that night in the hospital and was sent home the next day. I've spent the last 12 years trying to understand what this experience was and what it means. I've integrated it enough that I changed my religious beliefs to be more consistent with my experience. I never saw a tunnel, bright lights, or beings. What felt in that dark space was an immense amount of love or being held. It was like the biggest peaceful universal bear hug I've ever felt. It was like being wrapped in velvet in your mom's arms while being loved beyond measure. That void, as people talk about, was not scary to me. I had so much wisdom while I was there. I felt like I was a part of everything in that void. I wish I could think of a name for it. It was beautiful but made life here on Earth feel so confusing and so much like a dream in comparison to that place. Life after this experience. Before this experience, I had a solid view of life, death, and faith. I had been raised in a traditional Christian environment, with deeply rooted beliefs about the afterlife, and the idea that death marked a clear transition between two final destinations. What happened to me completely unraveled all of that. After receiving medication to treat a heart arrhythmia, I experienced something that shifted my understanding of reality forever. I don't know exactly what happened or where I went, but I know with every part of me that it was real. It felt even more real than this world, like waking up from a long dream and suddenly remembering who I truly was. While in that state, I felt detached from my physical body. It was like everything had frozen in place just before I popped out. I found myself in complete darkness, but it wasn't a frightening or empty space. It felt alive. That darkness held me with a love and peace so deep. It was almost tangible. It wrapped around me, soothed me, and filled me with a sense of unity with everything. I wasn't just observing it. I was it. I was the dark, the light, the silence, and the knowing. I was every tree, every rock, every person, and every living thing. And somehow, I was still myself. In that moment, I remembered things I had never known. I saw flashes of past lives, moments of kindness, moments of harm, each one feeling just as real as my current life. There was no judgment, just pure observation. One particular memory stunned me, when I later confirmed with my mother that it had actually happened during a time we were in foster care. That realization left me speechless. It was more than just a dream. It was truth, lived and verified. What struck me the most was the wisdom I seemed to access. I suddenly knew so much, everything really. And although I couldn't bring all of that knowledge back with me, the deep knowing still lives inside me. I now understand that love is the foundation of everything. That's what I brought back with me. An unwavering certainty that love is what truly matters. It's not something I was told. It's something I just knew. This experience shook my religious beliefs to the core. I no longer identify with the strict Christian teachings I was raised with. I've opened myself to other spiritual paths, especially those that align with the idea of oneness, like the law of one. I don't believe anymore that heaven or hell are places you go to. I believe we are always part of something greater, something far more loving than we've been led to believe. Since then, everything has changed. My priorities, my way of relating to others, even the friends I keep. I've lost people who couldn't relate to the new version of me, but I've also gained more authentic connections. My intuition has grown sharper, sometimes even eerily accurate. I live more intentionally now with compassion as my guide. I've become someone who just wants to love as big as I can and serve others wherever possible. Trying to put all of this into words feels almost impossible. There's no language that can fully describe what I went through. But I know this. It was real, and it changed me in ways I'm still discovering. And if there's one thing I hope others take from hearing my story, it's this. Love is the point. Always has been, always will be. Thank you for listening to this near-death experience. If you enjoyed this testimony and would like to hear more, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. You have no idea how much this can help the channel. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. See you soon.